She was called too old to marry, until the alpha vampire said, "She's eternal to me." In its marble halls and golden towers, worth was measured by youth, bloodlines, and how pleasing one looked beside a throne. Songs were written for young brides and brave kings, not for women who had waited too long and lived too quietly. That was why Elowen stood at the edge of the great hall, unseen by most, remembered by few. She was 35 winters old, an age the court whispered about with cruel smiles. Too old to be chosen, too old to bargain with, too old to dream. Her name, once spoken with hope, was now said with pity or not at all. Elowen kept her head lowered as nobles filled the hall, their silk robes brushing the stone floors like soft threats. Tonight was the binding feast, where alliances would be sealed through marriage. Young women were dressed in bright colors, their laughter sharp and nervous. They stood like offerings beneath the chandeliers. Elowen wore gray, not by choice, by instruction. "Do not draw attention," the Queen's lady had told her earlier that day. "You are here only because your family once mattered." Once. Elowen's hands folded in front of her, calm on the surface, trembling underneath. She had learned to stand still when the world decided she did not belong. The king rose from his throne, raising his hand for silence. "Tonight," he announced, "we celebrate unity. The future of Lithorian will be secured through rightful bonds." Cheers filled the hall. Elowen did not cheer. She watched as names were called, one by one. Young women stepped forward. Promises were made. Smiles were forced. Futures were decided without asking hearts. Then came the laughter. It started quietly, like a ripple, when Lord Brenner's voice carried across the hall. "What of Elowen?" he said, loud enough to be heard. "Surely we cannot forget her." More laughter followed. The king hesitated. The queen did not. "She has passed the season of usefulness," the queen said calmly. "Let us not pretend otherwise." The word struck harder than a slap. Elowen felt her face burn, but she did not cry. Crying had never saved her before. "She was once considered," another noble added, smirking. "But time is cruel to women." Someone said, "Perhaps she should thank us for allowing her to remain." Elowen's breath tightened. Her chest ached, but she remained standing. Pride was the last thing no one could take from her. Then the torches flickered. The hall fell silent. A cold wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing several flames at once. Shadows stretched along the walls, bending unnaturally, as if something ancient had entered the space. The doors at the far end of the hall opened, slowly. Guards stepped back, pale and uncertain. A figure walked in, tall, wrapped in black armor that seemed to drink in the light. His presence pressed down on the room, heavy and undeniable. His silver eyes glowed faintly beneath a dark crown carved with symbols older than the kingdom itself. The alpha vampire had arrived, Caelrith of the Night Dominion. Kings feared him. Queens avoided his gaze. Children were warned with his name. He ruled an immortal realm beyond the northern mountains, bound by ancient laws that kept him distant from human affairs. He did not attend feasts. He did not interfere. Until now. Every noble bowed. Even the king rose from his throne. "Your Majesty," the king said carefully, "we did not expect—" "You never do," Caelrith replied. His voice was calm, deep, and cold as stone beneath snow. Each word echoed as if the hall itself remembered him. His gaze moved slowly across the room, passing jewels, crowns, and frightened faces, until it stopped. On Elowen. She felt it instantly. The weight, the attention, as if she had been named by fate itself. Her breath caught. Caelrith stepped forward, his boots striking the stone floor with deliberate rhythm. Whispers filled the air, but no one dared speak aloud. He stopped in front of her. Up close, he was terrifying and strangely sorrowful. His face held the stillness of centuries, yet his eyes carried something raw and old. "What is your name?" he asked. "Elowen," she answered, her voice steady despite the fear twisting inside her. "You were mocked," he said, not as a question.
Yes. The court shifted uncomfortably.
"And dismissed," he continued. "Because of time." Yes, something flickered in his eyes. Anger, regret, recognition. He turned slowly to face the court. "You judge worth by decay," he said. "Yet you forget that time is a liar." No one spoke. Kaelweth raised his hand. Ancient markings glowed faintly along his skin. "By the covenant of blood and memory," he declared, "I claim Elwyn of Letharian under immortal protection." Gasps echoed through the hall. The queen stood. "You cannot! She is nothing!" Kaelweth's gaze snapped to her. "She is eternal to me." The words fell like thunder. Eloin's wrist burned suddenly, warm and bright. She cried out softly as a silver mark appeared on her skin, an ancient symbol, alive with power. The hall erupted in chaos. "That mark! It is real! The bond!" Elwyn stared at her wrist, heart pounding. She had never believed in destiny, never believed she was chosen for anything. Yet the mark glowed steadily, undeniable. She looked up at Kaelrith, fear and confusion mixing in her eyes. "What have you done?" she whispered. Kaelrith did not answer immediately. Instead, he removed his crown and knelt before her. "I have remembered you," he said quietly, "and the world will remember you too." Elowyn stood frozen, marked by an immortal king, her life split in two by a single sentence. As the mark pulsed with ancient light, one truth became clear. She was no longer forgotten, and nothing would ever be the same again. Elowyn rode in silence, wrapped in a dark cloak given to her by Kaelrith's guards. The road stretched through mist and cold hills, far from the warm stone towers of Lithorian. Behind her, the kingdom she had known all her life slowly disappeared, as if it had already erased her. Ahead lay the unknown. She touched her wrist again. The silver mark had not faded. It pulsed softly, warm against her skin like a quiet heartbeat. No matter how she tried to ignore it, she felt it. Aware, watchful, alive. Kaelrith rode at the front, his posture straight, his presence heavy even from a distance. He had spoken little since leaving the hall. Orders came from him in short, calm words, and his guards obeyed without question. Elowyn watched him when she thought he would not notice. He was not cruel, not careless, but there was distance around him like a wall built over centuries. She wondered how someone so powerful could seem so alone. By nightfall, the land changed. The trees grew darker, their branches twisted like reaching hands. The air felt thicker, old with memory. The moon hung low and red, watching silently as they crossed into the night dominion. Elowyn's breath caught as the citadel appeared. It rose from black stone cliffs, sharp and towering, carved directly from the mountain itself. No banners flew, no lights welcomed travelers. Yet it felt alive, aware of every step she took toward it. "This is where you rule?" she asked quietly. "Yes," Kaelrith replied without turning. "This is where time stands still." Inside, the citadel was vast and echoing. Stone halls curved like the inside of a cathedral, lit by soft, pale light that came from no visible flame. Shadows moved gently along the walls, not threatening, but watchful. Elowyn was given a chamber overlooking the valley. The room was simple but beautiful, carved with ancient symbols she could not read. "You are not a prisoner," Kaelrith said, standing at the doorway. "But you are bound!" She met his gaze. "You claimed me without asking."
"I did," he said.
"And I will answer for it." "For what reason?" she asked. Pity? His eyes darkened. Memory. That night, sleep did not come easily. Elowyn dreamed of another life. She stood in a field of snow, younger, dressed in white. A man knelt before her, bleeding, his silver eyes full of grief. "I will find you," he promised, "no matter how long it takes." She woke with tears on her face and the mark burning brightly. The next days passed in quiet tension. Elowen walked the citadel, watched by servants who treated her with careful respect. Some bowed, others stared with open curiosity. She felt like a question no one dared ask. Finally, Caelrith brought her to the Hall of Memory. It was a circular chamber filled with stone mirrors. Each surface shimmered faintly, reflecting not faces, but moments. "This place holds truth," he said, "and curses." He raised his hand to one mirror. The stone came alive. Elowen saw a younger version of herself, yet not herself, standing beside Caelrith centuries ago. She looked different, dressed in old royal clothing, her eyes full of hope.
That was you, Caelrith said softly.
"Your soul, your beginning." Elowen stepped back. "That is not possible." "You have lived many lives," he continued. "Always mortal. Always taken by time. Always reborn." Her knees weakened. "Why?" Caelrith closed his eyes. "Because I broke the law of eternity." He told her everything. Long ago he had loved a mortal queen. He had sworn to let her live her natural life, but fear had driven him to bind her soul to his, to keep her close, again and again. The immortals punished him for it. The curse was his sentence. She would be reborn through time. He would remember every life. He would never keep her. Elowen's chest tightened, so I was never chosen. I was trapped, and I hate myself for it. Anger flared inside her, sharp and sudden. You watched me be ignored, mocked. You knew what I was, and still said nothing. "I was forbidden to interfere," he said, "until the bond awakened fully. And now," she asked bitterly, "now the curse is changing." The mirrors began to crack. A deep tremor shook the hall. Caelrith turned sharply. "It has begun." Outside, the sky darkened unnaturally. Ancient seals around the citadel glowed red. The curse was no longer sleeping. That night, danger came openly. Shadows crossed the valley. Rival vampire lords drawn by the awakening bond. They believed Elowen's death would end Caelrith's punishment. Guards fought in silence. The air filled with fear and power. Elowen stood alone in her chamber when the door burst open. Caelrith stepped inside, blood on his armor, eyes burning. "You must listen to me," he said urgently. "There is a way to end this." She looked at him, heart pounding.
How? The curse can be broken, he said.
"But only if you choose to release me," her breath caught. "If you do," he continued, "I will forget you. Forever." Silence fell between them. Elowen felt the truth of it deep in her bones. To free him, she would be erased from his eternity. "And if I don't?" she asked. "Then war will come," he said. "And you will never live in peace." She turned away, tears filling her eyes. For the first time in her life, she was not unwanted. She was powerful, and power always demanded sacrifice. That night, Elowen stood at her window, looking out over the dark land, the mark on her wrist glowing steadily. She made a decision, one that would change everything. Far below, the curse stirred, waiting to claim its price. The wind howled along the cliffs, rattling the black stone towers of Caelrith's citadel. Shadows twisted in the torchlight, bending unnaturally as though the walls themselves feared what was coming. Elowen stood in the highest tower chamber, her hands clenched around the edge of a stone balcony. Below, the valley was filled with movement, figures in dark armor, wolves that moved with unnatural speed, and creatures whose shapes were half seen in the red moonlight. The rival vampire lords had arrived. They sought the end of her life, believing that killing her would free the alpha vampire, returning balance to the ancient laws. Elowen's heart pounded, but her mind was clear. For the first time in her life, she did not wait for someone else to decide her worth. She would act. Footsteps came behind her. Caelrith entered, silent as always, his dark cloak trailing like smoke. "You should not be out here," he said, though there was no anger in his voice, only concern. "I am not hiding," she replied. They come for me. I will not cower. Kelrith's silver eyes softened, but a shadow passed over them. You do not yet understand the power you carry. You are mortal, yet this bond gives you influence over forces older than kingdoms. That is dangerous. I do not care, Elwyn said firmly. If I am to die, I will face it on my own terms. He studied her for a long moment, as if weighing a decision she could not see. Then he stepped closer. You may survive, but the cost is more than you imagine. Elowen met his gaze, unflinching. I will bear it. If it means saving you, Ghislaine said to herself. Coolorith's expression flickered, a mixture of awe, fear, and longing. It is not your burden to bear alone. And yet, his voice softened. I cannot shield you from what is coming. Night deepened, and the citadel's magic pulsed. The silver mark on Elowen's wrist glowed brighter, as if recognizing the growing threat. The bond was alive, and with it her connection to Kelrith deepened. She could feel him, the weight of his centuries, his loneliness, the hidden sorrow behind his strength. You feel it too, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he knelt beside her, placing a hand near hers without touching the mark. Yes, I feel every heartbeat, every thought, but it is dangerous. You must be careful, Elowen. Desire, hope, fear, they can all be weapons in this place. Elowen swallowed, feeling the pull between them. A strange warmth filled her chest. Not fear, not simple admiration. Something older, deeper, something that had survived lifetimes. Then the alarm sounded, a deep, resonant chime that shook the stone walls. They are here, Kelrith said, rising. His movements were precise, controlled, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed him. We must prepare. The Citadel's defenders, vampires, sworn to him for centuries, gathered quickly, forming protective lines along the towers and battlements. Elowen watched as they moved with perfect synchronicity, a living wall of power and loyalty. I will help, she said, though her voice trembled. You are not trained for this, Kelrith said sharply. Stay within the inner sanctum. Protect yourself. No, I will fight. For hours, the valley burned with chaos. Shadows clashed with shadows. Metal rang against stone, and the howls of creatures echoed through the night. Elowen remained at the tower balcony, watching, learning. Each movement, each strategy, each pause in the battle revealed the depth of Kelrith's skill and the sheer weight of what he commanded. Yet she realized something else. Amid the battle, the lords were not just after her, they feared her. The bond made her more than mortal. It made her the key to changing the outcome of the war, the proof that even an immortal could be vulnerable. Kelrith appeared at her side again, leaning against the cold stone. Blood streaked his armor, and his eyes were sharper, harder. You cannot step into the fight yet, he said. The forces you see, most are beyond your understanding. I understand enough, she said. I understand that I will not wait to be saved. That is my power. For a long moment silence fell between them, broken only by the distant sounds of war. And in that silence, Elowen realized how much she cared. Not for the idea of power, not for the mark or the prophecy, but for him, for the man who had seen her, claimed her, and yet still carried the weight of centuries in his solitude. He studied her face. And if your courage fails, I do not intend to fail, she whispered. Then, a shadow moved across the balcony, a being taller than any human, wrapped in darkness, its eyes glinting red. Elowen froze. The mark on her wrist flared with silver light, as if warning her of danger. It has come for you, Kelrith said, voice low. One of the rival lords. He seeks to end this bond tonight. Before she could respond, the shadow leapt forward, moving with impossible speed. Elowen barely had time to react before Kelrith stepped in front of her, striking the figure with a force that shook the balcony. Metal clashed. Shadows collided. The air hummed with raw power, Elowen wanted to run, to hide, to do anything but watch, but she could not. Every movement, every strike, every whisper of the wind spoke to her now a language older than life itself. Then the impossible happened. The rival lord touched her mark, not with malice, but with recognition. The bond flared violently. Silver light shot outward, burning through the shadow and forcing it back. Elowen cried out, her chest tight, her vision swimming. She could feel Kael'reth's presence in every fiber of her being. His heartbeat, his power, his fear. "You are stronger than I thought," he said, his voice strained. "But this is only the beginning." The shadow retreated, slipping into the dark valley below. But the warning remained clear. Others would come. Harder, faster, more determined. Elowen collapsed onto the balcony floor, trembling. Her body ached, but her mind raced. She had seen her power and feared it. Yet she had also seen something else, the look in Kael'reth's eyes when he watched her. Not desire, not ownership, reverence. It made her heart twist in ways she could not name. Later, in the quiet of the inner chamber, Kael'reth approached her again. The storm outside raged like a living thing, but inside, the candlelight flickered softly. "You fought fear with courage," he said quietly. "I thought mortals were weak. I was wrong." Elowen met his gaze. "I fight for myself and for you." He paused, struggling with words. "If you continue to grow stronger, you may surpass me one day." She smiled faintly, though it did not reach her eyes. "Then let me surpass you. Teach me. Do not hide your truth." He studied her, and for the first time he allowed himself a moment of vulnerability. "You will have power, yes, but there's a cost. The world will not forgive us. The bond, it is dangerous, and it will demand sacrifices neither of us yet understand." Elowen reached for his hand, not touching the mark, but near it. "I am ready," she whispered. Kael'reth looked at her, his eyes shining silver in the candlelight. "You are mortal, and yet you are eternal to me." The words hung in the air, heavier than any crown or command. Suddenly the walls of the citadel shook violently. A deep rumble echoed through the stone corridors. Silver light flared from the mark on Elowen's wrist. "They're coming," Kael'reth said, his voice tight with warning. "More of them, and they will not stop." Elowen swallowed hard, her heart pounding. "Then we fight," she said. "Not together," he said, his gaze locking with hers. "You must choose. The bond will protect you, but only if you trust it fully." Elowen felt the weight of her choice settle on her shoulders. To fight without fear, to risk death, to embrace a bond older than memory. And in that moment she understood the truth she had always tried to deny. She was no longer a woman forgotten by time. She was a woman who could change it. Outside, the storm grew louder. The valley below glimmered with shadows that moved like armies. The night stretched endlessly, a promise of danger, power, and destiny. Elowen looked at Kael'reth, feeling the pull of eternity in her chest. "I am ready," she said again, louder this time. He nodded, a shadow of a smile crossing his lips. "Then let the cost of eternity begin." The balcony shook again. A scream echoed from the valley below. And for the first time, Elowen realized the battle would not only be for survival. It would be for love, trust, and a chance to claim her place beside the immortal king. Silver light flared once more from her wrist, stronger than before, and the night answered with its own roar. The valley below burned with shadows, yet above, the citadel stood unbroken. Its black stone towers rose into the stormed sky, defying wind, lightning, and fear. Elowen stood at the edge of the balcony once more, her cloak whipped around her, her hair tangled in the icy wind. The silver mark on her wrist glowed steadily, a steady pulse against the chaos below. Beside her, Kael'reth's presence was calm yet formidable. His dark cloak flared behind him like wings of night, his silver eyes scanning the valley with precision. He had fought battles older than kingdoms, but even he understood the gravity of what was to come. "They will not stop," he said quietly, "and yet we must face them." Eowyn turned to him, courage hardening in her chest. "Then we face them together." Ceolwrith studied her, the centuries of sorrow in his gaze meeting her mortal determination. "Together," he repeated, as if testing the word on his tongue. They moved into the Hall of Memory, where mirrors of stone shimmered with past lives, echoes of centuries, and whispers of prophecy. The hall had become a battlefield in itself, a place where time itself remembered every strike, every victory, every heartbreak. Ceolwrith extended his hand. "Eowyn, the bond, it is alive. It can protect you, but it can also demand more than either of us imagined." Eowyn placed her hand near his, feeling warmth and power flow through her. "I am ready," she said. "Whatever it asks, I will endure." The storm outside intensified. Lightning split the sky, and the shadows of the rival lords approached the citadel, moving like a tide of darkness that sought to swallow everything. "Then it begins," Ceolwrith said, his voice deep and steady. The first wave of attackers reached the outer walls. Shadows clashed with defenders in a storm of light and darkness. The ground shook beneath the impact of immortal strength and mortal courage combined. Eowyn felt the bond flare, connecting her to Ceolwrith in ways that made her heart race. She could sense his thoughts, his emotions, even his heartbeat. Fear, determination, and an unspoken longing reached out to her, and she answered with her own courage. The mirrors of memory pulsed, reflecting not only the past but the possibilities of what could come. Eowyn stepped forward, feeling the bond guide her movements. She raised her hands, and silver light shot outward, striking the shadowy figures and sending them reeling. Ceolwrith moved beside her, a blur of strength and precision. His power was immense, yet he never overpowered her. Instead, he moved as if dancing with her, the bond amplifying their abilities, blending mortal determination with immortal might. Hours passed in a blur of light and shadow. The rival lords pressed harder, their attacks relentless. Yet Eowyn did not falter. With each pulse of silver light from her mark, she grew stronger, more confident, more certain of her own worth. Finally, a massive shadow appeared, taller and darker than the rest. Its red eyes glowed with ancient hatred. Eowyn stepped forward, feeling fear, yet refusing to let it dominate her. "I will not be afraid," she said. Ceolwrith placed a hand on her shoulder. "You are not alone. Trust the bond. Trust yourself." The shadow roared and leapt forward, but Eowyn raised her hands. The mark flared brightly, a beacon of silver against the darkness. The shadow recoiled, struggling against the light. Then Ceolwrith struck, his strength precise, his movements flawless. Together they forced the creature back, until finally, with a final roar, it dissolved into the storm. Silence fell. The wind howled, but the shadows no longer advanced. The valley was empty except for the battered defenders of the citadel. Eowyn collapsed to her knees, exhausted. Ceolwrith caught her, steadying her with gentle strength. "You were magnificent," he said quietly. "More than I imagined." "More than I dared hope." She looked up at him, sweat and ash on her face. "I only followed your lead." "No," he corrected gently. "You led yourself. You chose to stand, to fight, to embrace the bond. That courage, it is eternal." Tears filled her eyes, not from fear, but from relief and wonder. She had survived. She had grown stronger, and more than that, she had been seen, not as a woman too old, not as someone forgotten, but as someone eternal in her own right. Ceolwrith held her hands, the silver mark glowing between them. "The curse is broken," he said, "but not in the way the prophecy spoke. You remain mortal, but the bond, it is ours, timeless, unbreakable."
Eowyn blinked, trying to comprehend. "I remain mortal, but we are eternal?"
"Yes," he said, his voice soft, almost tender. "You will age, Time will touch you, but the bond will remember. It will endure, and I will endure with it. For a long moment, silence filled the chamber, broken only by the distant echoes of the storm. Then, gently, Eloin leaned into him. "Do you forgive me?" she whispered, "for all the lives we did not share?" Calreth shook his head, a shadow of a smile on his lips. "No forgiveness is needed. Every life led us here. Every moment, every struggle, every sorrow. It was all part of the bond. And now we are free to shape our own eternity." Eloin felt a weight lift from her heart. The fear, the loneliness, the whispers of being forgotten, all of it melted away. She was seen, she was loved, and she was powerful, not because of magic or immortality, but because of courage, choice, and heart. Outside, the storm began to clear. The moon shone bright, reflecting off the black towers of the citadel. The valley, once filled with shadows and death, now glimmered with quiet light. Calreth lifted her chin gently. "Come with me," he said. "We have eternity ahead. Let us begin it together." Eloin nodded, a small, confident smile forming. "Together!" she echoed. For the first time, she stepped forward, not as a woman too old to matter, but as a woman who would shape history, who would teach even immortals what it meant to love and to endure. The citadel doors opened, welcoming them into the night. The wind carried their footsteps steady and certain across the black stone halls. And as they walked, the bond pulsed softly between them, silver, eternal, and unbroken. No crown, no law, no curse could undo it, for they had chosen each other, and eternity, at last, was theirs. The stars above shone brighter than ever, as if the heavens themselves celebrated a bond older than time, yet born anew in courage, love, and choice. Eloin glanced at Calreth, their hands brushing, and for a moment the world was still. "No prophecy, no curse, no shadow," she whispered, "can take this from us." Calreth's eyes glimmered silver. "Eternal is a choice," he said, "and we have chosen each other." Together they stepped into the night, leaving fear, sorrow, and forgotten pasts behind. And in that darkness, light lived, quiet, steady, eternal.